Cash incentives for Greenlanders, up to $100,000 each? What's being reported, what's not, and why Greenland is back at the center of global power. Let's slow down for a second, because this story is bigger than the headline. You may have heard a striking claim that people close to Donald Trump have discussed offering Greenlanders direct financial incentives, with figures reported anywhere from roughly $10,000 up to $100,000 per person. It's the kind of number that grabs attention immediately. But here's the professional reality check version. What's described publicly is not a signed policy, not a funded program, and not something already being implemented. It's being reported as internal deliberation, an idea tested in the realm of strategy and persuasion. And that distinction matters a lot. Still, the fact that this concept is even being floated tells us something important. Greenland has returned to the top tier of strategic thinking, not as a curiosity, not as a punchline, as a serious geopolitical prize. What's being reported and what it does not automatically mean. According to reporting, the idea involves lump sum payments, direct cash, positioned as a sweetener to build support for a major political shift, a looser relationship with Denmark, and a tighter alignment with the United States. The numbers vary, the details appear unsettled. Who would qualify? How would it be funded? Would it be one-time, yearly, or tied to a new political framework? And perhaps most importantly, what legal and diplomatic path could even make such an offer viable? So the honest takeaway is this: it's a strategic concept under discussion, not an executed policy. In newsroom terms, it's a signal, not a settled outcome. Why Greenland keeps returning to Washington's strategic imagination. To understand why this story has weight, you need to understand Greenland's value. Greenland isn't just ice and distance, it's geography with consequences. First, there's security. Greenland sits at a critical junction between North America and Europe. In defense planning, the Arctic and North Atlantic routes matter for surveillance, early warning, and the broader architecture of deterrence. Put simply, where Greenland is located makes it strategically irreplaceable. Second, there's the Arctic itself. The Arctic is no longer a quiet back page of global politics. It's becoming a theater where access, mobility, and long-term positioning matter more each year. Where movement becomes easier, competition becomes sharper, and where competition sharpens, alliances get tested. Third, and this is the silent driver, there are critical minerals and the politics of supply chains. Modern state power is tied to secure access to strategic materials. Even the perception that Greenland could play a role in future supplies of critical resources can elevate it from remote territory to strategic terrain. This is the foundation beneath the headline. The money is dramatic, the location is decisive. The cash persuasion theory, and why it's both tempting and dangerous. Now let's talk about the cash angle. On paper, direct payments can look like an efficient instrument. Greenland's population is small. In purely fiscal terms, even a large per-person figure might appear affordable compared to the cost of decades-long strategic competition, infrastructure, or expanded defense posture. But politics is not accounting. Cash offers carry a built-in hazard. They can be interpreted as prosperity promised or sovereignty priced. Those are not the same narrative. One invites curiosity, the other invites outrage. Even if framed as economic partnership, the optics are uniquely combustible. It risks dividing Greenland society between those who see opportunity and those who see an insult. It invites accusations of manipulation, and it can harden Denmark's response while pulling Europe into a sharper sovereignty posture. In short, the instrument can be powerful in theory, but destabilizing in practice. The hard barrier: legality, legitimacy, and the limits of transactional geopolitics. Greenland is a self-governing territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. That single sentence changes everything. Any major shift would have to pass through democratic legitimacy in Greenland in a way that feels real and clean, not coerced,
not rushed, not bought. It would collide with Denmark's constitutional and political framework, and it would ripple through alliance dynamics because territorial sovereignty disputes among allies become stress tests, especially for NATO cohesion. So even if some version of the idea was pursued, the pathway would be narrow, politically costly, and legally complex. Greenland's internal reality. Independence is not the same as switching patrons. Another nuance gets lost in international debate. Support for independence does not automatically translate to support for becoming part of the United States. Many Greenlanders want stronger self-determination. Many also want protection of culture, language, institutions, and social cohesion. Greenland is not just strategic terrain, it is home. And homes don't move between power centers without deep consequences, economic, cultural, and psychological. That's why any proposal centered on money alone risks misunderstanding the core of the question. Identity and sovereignty are not line items. Denmark and Europe, why this becomes more than a bilateral dispute. Denmark's leadership has indicated it takes Trump's Greenland interests seriously. European reactions have emphasized sovereignty and the principle that Greenland's future belongs to Greenlanders. And that's not merely symbolic. Europe understands the precedent problem. If territory and sovereignty among allies become open to pressure tactics, the norm itself weakens. The debate becomes larger than Greenland. It becomes about the rules of the Western security architecture. What to watch next if you want to follow this like a professional? If this story evolves beyond headlines, it will reveal itself through signals you can track. 1. Institutional language, draft proposals, appropriations talk, legal frameworks, formal diplomatic steps. 2. A shift from cash talk to status models. In other words, movement toward structured association frameworks rather than slogans. 3. Greenlandic domestic politics. Statements about referendums, timelines, economic viability, and what independence would practically entail. 4. Denmark's counter-strategy, investment, Arctic security packages, and stronger European coordination. 5. NATO signaling. If alliance risk language grows, you're watching escalation. Conclusion. The headline is money, but the story is the era. Even if the most dramatic figure, $100,000 per person, never becomes more than a tested idea, the conversation itself is revealing. It shows the Arctic rising on the global agenda. It shows geography and resources becoming instruments of power again. And it shows transactional thinking creeping into spaces once governed by quieter diplomacy. So, if you want the clean takeaway, here it is. This story isn't only about whether cash was discussed. It's about how strategic competition is pushing politics into sharper, more abrasive forms, and why Greenland has become a focal point of that new reality.